A very warm afternoon greeting to our esteemed panelists and distinguished guests. We extend our heartfelt gratitude for your presence at today's significant session meticulously organized by Power to SME. So today focus will be on boosting financial resilience, effective working capital management for SME manufacturers. Now, to discuss the challenges and opportunities and way ahead, we have with us a panel of speakers with session chair who needs no introduction is Dr. H.P. Kumar, who has held a position of chairman and managing director of National Small Industries Corporation in the past, and also happens to hold a prominent position of director of external affairs with us at Power to SME. And present in our meeting is also Mr. T.R. Vardhan as one of the panelists, who is a vice president of the SME Chamber of India and CEO of Mascot Systems Private Limited. Recently, he was highlighted in this week's edition of Business Today as well. Additionally, we welcome Mr. Anupam Kaul, who is a strategic advisor in quality and standards, renowned for his distinguished career overseeing government committees and institutes focusing on standards and quality. Now, before I hand over the session to Dr. Kumar Saab, I would like to take you through a brief introduction on Power to SME. Power to SME was founded by Mr. R. Narayan in the year 2012. Mr. Narayan has also held a prominent position of president of FICCI CMSME, a body run by the MSME division of the FICCI. Mr. Narayan came up with an innovative business model which eliminated the intermediaries in the supply chain of commonly used raw materials. And from big manufacturers to MSME manufacturers, and thus providing a better pricing benefits to the sector. Now, sorry, Power to SME ecosystem, was created from procurement of raw material to purchasing of MRO goods. Now, P2S is a mother brand which undertakes the operation of sourcing raw materials and procurement solutions. Then we have SME shops, which is a one-stop shop addressing SME MRO needs to meet the growing and frequent requirements of SME buyers for consumable industrial goods. Then we have Biz Funds, that's an in-house NBFC, which offers innovative and competitive financial products for raw material purchase financing. And then we have Finance Me, that's a fourth arm of us, that ensures seamless approval of working capital loans for SME partners through empaneled financial institutions, to get the access to the financing needs they need to grow their business. Now, these are the key product categories that we deal in amongst many others. These are the major industries that we are serving. These are, it's a one-stop solution, Power to SMEs, basically for all requirements of manufacturing SMEs, right from their raw material procurement, purchase financing, MRO requirements, and these all are powered by our digital capabilities. These are some of the investors that we have. These are the accolades that we have won in the last 10 years, 12 years, I'll say. Thank you. And this is where you can find us on the social media. Now, I hand over to Dr. Kumar Saab for taking up the session from here and introducing the speakers. Over to you, sir. Sir, you're on mute, sir.
Yes, sorry. So thank you, Varun. Thank you very much. And welcome to all the distinguished panelists of this session and also the participants. In fact, it's a very important issue that we are going to discuss today. Effective working capital management for SME manufacturers. So effective working capital management will come later in our discussion, but then first of all, let us know what is working capital. What are the components of the working capital? And how does it work for any business enterprise? Manufacturing, of course, is specific today, but for any other business enterprise also, whether it is a manufacturing or service-owned enterprise. Working capital management becomes virtually a very important task for any management. Working capital, as I said, has many components, starting from, for a manufacturer, starting from raw materials, goods in process, which are in the stage of manufacturing at various stages, and then finished goods holding. Finished goods holding, of course, in the inventory as well as for transportation, packaging, all that comprises of finished goods. In addition to this, which is part of the inventory, the receivables, the book debts, the debtors become another important element of working capital. Now, when we say that these are all asset side, raw material, goods in process, finished goods, receivables or book debts, there is another element, a part of working capital, which also makes a lot of effect on the working capital, is the payable, the creditors, the goods payable, because they make an impact on the total quantum of requirement of the working capital. So, in nutshell, what happens is that the working capital, starting from the date of purchase of raw material or acquiring the raw material until the time your book dates or the sales are realized, that period becomes the working capital cycle during which your working capital remains blocked from one stage to another, from cash to procurement of raw material, from raw material goes to manufacturing stages in different stages, gets converted into finished goods converted into packaging, packaged material, transported and then sold, and then ultimately after the sales, the realization of the debtors, the book debts. So all this cycle involves working capital holding. Now, this working capital holding, as per RBI, Reserve Bank of India, which when initially RBI mandated working capital holding for different kinds of manufacturing industries, they fixed norms that for a particular engineering industry, the total norms would be 3 months, 3.5 months, 4 months, starting from 2.5 to 3.5 months. There was a report given by Tandon Committee as back as mid 70s, when they realized that for any manufacturing enterprise or company, this should be the ideal working capital cycle. And the relevance of this fixing this cycle or the norms was that banks, when they are lending working capital finance, they should be able to take care of this cycle and work out the requirements based on the projected sales. Because if your sales is 2 crores and your period of working capital cycle is 3 months, so by and large your requirement should be 50 lakhs rupees. 2 crores का 3 महीने का निकालें अगर आप, तो 50 लाख रुपए working capital हो जाता है. Now, when these broad norms were fixed, even then there is a need to manage the working capital on day-to-day basis. Because the moment your working capital becomes less than or excess, it is going to cost the company. If it is less, it is going to interrupt your production schedule. Your capacity utilization may get affected. And if it is higher than the requirement, suppose you need 3 months inventory holding and you are holding 4 months inventory holding. If you have maybe 1 month cycle for recovery of your book debts and you are not able to recover for 2 months or 3 months, naturally they are going to increase the requirement of the working capital. And once the working capital holding increases, the cycle increases, it is going to cost you more in terms of the interest cost, because you have to borrow more, you have to deploy more resources in producing the same amount of goods for which maybe lesser working capital would have been appropriate, but you are spending more than what is required. So naturally, resource or the financial resource has a cost. That is why we call it as the subject of discussion is effective working capital management. While working capital management is done, by the management in any case, starting from the middle management to top management. But what is effective? Effective working capital management is when your working capital requirement, the needs is completely fully met by the availability of working capital resources, not short, not excess. In majority of the cases, there is a tendency to deviate from the appropriate requirement of the working capital. And that is done sometimes deliberately, sometimes, without knowledge, without any conscience as to what is the appropriate way of managing the working capital. Sometimes, you shift some of the resources, liquid resources from the bank account, issue a check for acquiring a machine, spend some money on construction of a room, additional factory building, or some infrastructure, buying the, like generator, buying a car, buying some fixed assets, spending some money for your family. All this money goes from your bank account. You feel that you are using the sales, but you are not using the sales. You are using working capital, which is deployed in your finance, in your manufacturing enterprise. which should not be diverted from your bank for any other purpose. Sorry. So managing all these dynamics in manufacturing requires, laying down certain norms and managing according to those norms. Now, working capital can be a fixed level of working capital for the entire year of operation based on if your manufacturing schedule is equal. But if your manufacturing schedule changes from month to month or quarter to quarter or season to season, naturally the requirement also undergoes a change. That is why infuse additional working capital. The working capital limits, which is sanctioned by the bank, takes care of your seasonal requirement also. Then cost becomes another important issue. How do you procure working capital funds? If you are procuring working capital funds from the cost effective sources of funds is good. But if you are managing your working capital by procuring some of the resources from a very costly source like NBFCs or maybe other sources which are providing costlier than the bank finance, it could be costing, it could dent your profitability. So effective management includes all these management: inventory holding, period of inventory holding, working capital cycle, recovery of your receivables, then making a proper system for managing your payables also, creditors. If you are paying your creditors too early, then what is in the market trend, naturally you are using your working capital unnecessarily in releasing the payments. But if you are delaying the payments, you are losing on your credibility also, and sometimes losing on in terms of the market credit. So these things are also part of your working capital management. So with this context, I would invite my distinguished speakers. And first of all, we have two experts, in fact, to talk about all these issues and set the future, trend as to how the efficient working capital management, can be done. Although I think those who are into manufacturing and into real business, they know, in fact, because they are into the game already, they know day-to-day basis. But then there are certain finer points which need to be considered, and they can be noted by the participants for implementation, particularly when they are dealing with the banks. Because banks would be very careful in silently watching as to how you are managing your working capital. So I would like to invite, first of all, Mr. Anupam Kaul, who is the strategic advisor, quality and standards, a very senior bureaucrat. He is an esteemed quality and standardization expert with over 40 years of comprehensive experience across various quality related domains. So, including manufacturing and industrial quality control, inspection, certification, standard development. This is another area, in fact. Besides the working capital management, I think we have the opportunity of having Mr. Call today with regard to who is going to talk about quality, because quality becomes another important issue in every manufacturing enterprise. I was talking recently to a gentleman who is manufacturing, power equipments in Manesar. He said, I have a problem with the BIS. I said, what is the issue? He said, sir, quality is main consideration. They are not insisting on a particular test which should be done. And I said, okay, I'll take you to BIS. So when I was looking at Mr. Kaul's biodata, I found he was associated with BIS as a chair in some committee. So welcome, Mr. Kaul. It's indeed a pleasure having you here, listening to your experience and guidance as to how the manufacturing industry can not only manage efficiently the working capital, but also take care of the quality aspects, because you have that domain expertise. So over to you, Anupam ji.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. So it's a pleasure being associated on this forum and with you and with Mr. Vardhan Tanjore. So thank you for inviting me also, Varun, to this webinar. And I've had pretty good participants today. So allow me to share my screen. I have made a presentation for today. So I can't share my screen yet. If I can get the rights, I can share it.
I'll just give it to you, sir. One
Yeah,
second.
yeah. Actually, thank you also, Kumar sir, for setting the context very nicely articulated. One part is describing what is working capital per se, and second is, of course, the guidelines available, statutory guidelines from the RBI, and also the credit worthiness of the company that enables them to raise capital from the banks. So it's extremely important. Also, very correctly said. So I think everybody here is a veteran, I'm quite sure. And they actually handle working capital on a day-to-day basis. We are external experts. We come from different streams, having worked in different areas. So my talk, of course, primarily, I will be touching on working capital. But I will be linking it to the multiple operational issues that are there with the SME, any manufacturing industry and the SMEs, and how the interplay happens between working capital and associated, of course, other accounts ratios, and some of the operational issues that have a great impact on it. So with that, I have a presentation. I'll share that with you, and then we'll go ahead. Okay, so just a moment, please. Mm. So yeah, okay, right. Is it visible, the screen?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
Oh, good. Okay, okay, right, okay. So that is what I am going to do. Primarily, my background, as Mr. Kumar has already described, comes from the quality background. But of course, I mean, in 40 years' time, you come across and do many things in your life. So I have managed organizations. I mean, where of course we didn't have that kind of working capital risks or pressures as probably you all face, but all of us have managed in some way or the other. And then I have also been associated in conducting a lot of audits, assessments of organizations in manufacturing services, government, must be running in more than hundreds. So you get some exposure based on those. So based on that only, I have made this presentation exclusively for today's webinar. So, okay, now let me first of all hide. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Okay, so I think this has start from here. Yes, yeah. Mr. Kumar has already described what is working capital management. So this is it, as management of cash flow essentially and inventories to ensure that the current assets are always higher than our liability. That is the most primary requirement. I mean, to maintain both the positive cash flow and also for having a working capital that actually works for us. The moment this ratio or this equation goes the other way, we will start having the problem. So then these are the different components already described in a way by Mr. Kumar, a little more detail over here. So these are the components. I think this has come from a textbook. Basically, accounting, anybody who's done accounting would know this. But it is good just to recap so that we can have the later part of the presentation will relate to this. So we have, of course, cash and cash equivalents that liquid available to us in liquid. So again, by definition, working capital and current assets based on current asset and liabilities, all within the framework of 1 year's time. Anything beyond that goes in long-term assets and long-term liabilities. So we are dealing with normally a 1 year horizon. And also, as mentioned, the working capital cycle taken is about 3 months time, 3 to 4 months time. So cash and cash equivalents, payment receivable from customers, and of course, any other prepaid expenses that we may have already paid. So it's an asset to us, it's available to us. And then more importantly, is the inventory, which takes away a lot of our working capital availability. So all kinds of raw inventory, raw materials, components, and then a lot of material in the in-process, finished goods in our warehouse, and maybe in some other warehouses that we are custodians. And then, of course, a lot of consumables, which is part of manufacturing. and equally important, spares for machinery. So all these constitute inventory, and all of these are considered to be current assets, which can be liquidated. So that's how it is. And then on the other side is the liability. So all kinds of payments which are due from our side to suppliers of materials, whatever goods we have purchased, whatever is unsettled is our liability. Similarly, payment due to employees, whatever is due currently is the salaries and wages. And other thing, payment for utilities that we have, electricity, power, gas, whatever we are taking. Payment for transport and warehouse rentals, if we have hired them, and also transport. And also short-term debt servicing. So, whenever we raise money from banks, and if there's a liability to pay within the short term, so this becomes a liability. So the difference in the two is the working capital. And therefore, the coming to this is the working capital efficiency, or how to improve it. So the fundamental is that we have to make the working capital work harder. Basically, it's this. And for this, that means what we need to do for a given amount of whatever we have allocated, or we have available, or what we have borrowed, or a portion from our own profits or equity, whichever. So, but we allocate a distinct amount or a sum, which is working capital. So it must give us higher gross profit and a gross margin. So cost of goods produced or sold from that, and whatever is the net sales, higher production volume and sales revenues, higher profitability, and also higher credit rating, because that was touched by Mr. Kumar. So that this is seen. So if you have managed the working capital well, and if you are profitable, you have a healthy cash flow, all go together, then we are also credit worthy for getting further borrowing, both for short term and for long term. So then these are the primary risks. So one thing which is quite clear, and I think it must be known to all of you as well. So working capital, cash flow, and profitability, all these things, these three, they go together. So if you have healthy working capital, hopefully the cash flow will also be healthy, and that will also be an indicator of profitability, and vice versa too. So if you are profitable, obviously your working capital will be better and cash flow will also be better. But of course, they are still independent. Cash flow can still come from, issues can come from multiple reasons. For example, in the pandemic, suddenly, even though we had order books, we had even made supplies, cash suddenly stopped. So cash flow became an issue, of course. So then these are the risk factors, primarily, as we see on the screen here, running out of cash or facing gaps. So sorry. And also that we are unable to pay our suppliers, employees, creditors, or taxes just because we don't have the available cash. There may be receivables, for example. We may have otherwise booked orders, or we have made supplies, but we don't have the cash available. So that becomes an issue. So the causes are, of course, low collection of receivables, excessive inventory. I'm going to speak a little more about inventory when we come later, because that's something which is my topic as well. And then as if sales go down, again, we'll have cash flow issues. And then expenses. So expenses can be all and sundry expenses, could come in manufacturing, administrative expenses, quality expenses, people expenses, all kind of expenses are there. So we'll have a look at those also. And then anything like I mentioned about COVID and all that, unexpected emergencies can always arise. There can be a complete stoppage. There can be regulatory actions taken against companies. So many things can actually happen. The unit can be, for regulatory purposes, it can be shut down. Recently, you must have heard about the pharma company, excipient companies particularly, with government shut down because of certain incidents overseas in the pharma sector. So those things can happen, and that can actually have an impact both on cash flow and on the profitability. And profitability, of course, so the risk factors are then our margin goes down or gross profit goes down. Net profit can go down for other reasons, or we can actually get into losses. So these are on profitability, and here the primary causes are, of course, so any of these, and I'm only talking of the negative risk here. There can be a positive risk also, where these things can work to our advantage. So direct costs and material costs keep going down, and particularly commodities, materials, minerals, metals, plastics, all of these, resins, anything. So material cost keeps going up and down, and it's generally upward spiral. Increased labor costs, both in terms of number of people that we deploy and also wages. Wages keep going up, some by statutory reasons, some because of market conditions. Increased utility costs, that we have. So, I mean, power cost, water cost, gas, all the things. High maintenance cost, which I'll touch upon, which is fairly high if it is not controlled, especially in SMEs, and spares. So these are all direct costs, and all of them have an impact on profitability and also on the working capital. Then we have indirect expenses. So the cost of capital itself, at the rate that we borrow from them, or opportunity lost because the capital could have been deployed more gainfully. So that's the cost of the capital itself. And of course, also in that sense, also the cost of the inventory that we actually have. Then marketing costs can be very high. We've been watching Shark Tank, and we have been listening to the extent of spending that is required for marketing purposes. Less in B2B conditions, more in B2C conditions. But even in B2B, there are certain marketing costs that need to be incurred. Then administrative costs. This is something which is highly controllable, but many times, particularly in startups, this becomes a major issue. So the administrative costs are fairly high, and they become a drain. Then all types of wasteful resources that we have, materials, equipment lying idle, and space lying idle, and so people lying idle. So many things can remain idle without being deployed usefully. And then, of course, competitive offering, if there's a fall in sales or pressure on prices. So that can also impact the profitability. And then these are by choice, other expenses. So in certain years, there is a need to put R&D effort. So that is a portion from, of course, from the in the budget. And sometimes it is, you have to take the money from the profits. So it can impact profitability. And then for that year, and then CapEx investment as and when required, that also impacts. For that particular year, it may impact the profitability as you book it on the book. And then other factors, of course, decreasing revenue and loss in sales, competitive offerings, quality, delivery performance, all these things can actually have an impact on revenue, and therefore the profitability will go down. So then we have this, sorry, I think I'm just mixing up. Yeah, okay. Actually, my screen is being flooded with so many admission notices. So I don't know if it can be switched off or not. So these are then the the components of working capital efficiency. So of course cash and cash equivalents. So what can be done about this? So I mean, if there is a need, it can be augmented either through equity participation, which of course amounts to dilution, or promoters can put more equity themselves, borrowings, and or diverting the surplus from the profit. So that is how we control the cash and cash equivalent. It is always calibrated. Arun, can I somehow control this flashing messages on my screen when somebody is joining?
Sir, we made you co-host to share the screen basically.
Oh, that's the reason. Okay, understood.
Right.
Okay, fine. Yeah, okay.
I'll try. They'll
Yeah,
quickly.
that's fine. Okay, right. Right. On the payments receivable side from the customers. So it is always, and everybody always tries this, to negotiate on the shorter credit cycle, and also wherever possible for the advance payments. So that actually helps, in sustaining your working capital requirements. So and keeping it cash flow as well as working capital positive. On the expense side, then of course, prepaid expenses. So this slide is touching on how to reduce your inventory through these administrative means actually. And then we will also look at on the quality side also later on. So on the raw materials and components, so we reduce through alignment with the supplier, and we have this just in time and Kanban technique, which we'll touch upon a little later. So one of the methods is this, to optimize the net inventory of raw material and components in our custody. So as much as possible, either it is aligned to the production cycle, or we try and ensure that the supplier builds the inventory, and we don't actually, we're not liable for keeping that inventory ourselves. And that will also happen to you as well. When you are a supplier, your customer will try and do the same thing with you. So therefore, the best thing is to actually create a Kanban system or a pull system, so that the entire supply chain from your supplier to your customer and onwards becomes completely aligned. So that should be the objective for the entire supply chain, to make it as smooth as possible, so that there is no buildup at any point, at any place. So that's what GIT and Kanban systems try and do, and that helps everybody. The entire system becomes more efficient, including your own company. And then, of course, the in-process goods. So this is, of course, a lot of inventory actually gets accumulated on the workshop at different stages of the production. And that's especially when it is a batch type of production. Every stage you'll find, a batch or a lot waiting for the next process to really happen. And then there is a lot of idling at different stations. So before a piece or a product will get attended to by a particular machine or a process, there is a lot of waiting time, idle time that is there. And for that, some of you would have certainly would have heard about this term called value stream mapping. It become very important to reduce the takt time and also to reduce the waiting time at each station. So overall takt time, end to end, time it takes from a raw material to the finished stage. So that time gets reduced. And there are methods for that. So lean clusters, lean cells are created. And we target to go from a batch to a single piece flow. Single piece flow, this term came from the Toyota production systems, but become very frequent. I'm sure many of you would be having. So as much as possible, all across the production cycle, reduce batch size. If it is 100 today, try and bring it down to 50, 25, 10, 5, and then ultimately it becomes 1. And even nowadays, thanks to technology, thanks to IoT, IIoT, it is possible, even if you're making customized products, bespoke products, to have a single piece flow and also build in the variability based on the order into the process. It is possible to do that. So this is one single approach or a process or a tool that we must follow to reduce our inventory size, particularly in the production. And then on the finished goods side, of course, finished goods, which Mr. Mathur also mentioned. So optimize the finished goods inventory based on the order book. This becomes difficult, easier to say, but to the extent possible. And now, fortunately, we have very good softwares, and we are slowly moving on the AI side, which is going to give us much more insight, much more assistance in the prediction modeling. So wherever it's a mass production, and wherever there are multiple customers, so there it is possible to do this kind of a prediction modeling, even with a single customer, looking at their production cycles. If it can be aligned, it is possible to do that. So the past history, past order books, and looking at the current order book or a rate contract that we have, it is possible to optimize based on this prediction modeling. And then, of course, inventory balancing. There are multiple other. Hijunka technique is also there, particularly if you have many SKUs. So less SKUs, it doesn't matter. But if you have, let's say, 100 or more than 150 or different, and you have to keep all of them in the stock, then it becomes very good to have other tools like the Hijunka for optimizing your inventory. But especially SKUs which are not moving, which are dead, which is only notional, no orders received, they should be minimized from the inventory, certainly. So any inventory reduced is obviously giving to working capital. And then we have, of course, the consumable and spares. Again, not counted as direct materials, but they occupy a lot of capital, working capital blocked. And I have seen stores, n number of products kept all over, and when we go and ask them when was it last used, many items were never used or used in the last 5 years, or last 3 years, but they are kept in full stock as if they'll be needed tomorrow, that much. So again, that becomes very, very important. So you must look at, what is the consumption history again, and for each consumable and each spare. Consumable, of course, is a function of production, but spares in particular can always be controlled. So certainly you must do your stores audit frequently, look at the movement, look at the consumption patterns, and then liquidate whatever is not required, whatever it costs. So it actually releases the working capital and gives more cash in hand. And then also these things can also be aligned to the JIT and with the suppliers. Then, of course, on the payment side, due to suppliers, so negotiation obviously on the longer credit cycle as much as possible. Also negotiate on price and discounts for the early payments as much as possible. Then we have, of course, payment for utilities. Here also, if you pay maybe sometimes power and all, they give you discount for early payments or bulk payments. So those can be availed. Then payments for transport and warehouse rentals, again, optimize the transport cost through in-source and outsource. These are options. So in-source and outsource, whether you want to have your own transport or you want to give it outside, whichever makes more sense. So if you have many, many cycles of transport in and out every time, it may make more sense to have your own. And if it is less, then probably it's outsourced is a better option. So that has to be balanced and determined. That's how it is decided. Also, outsourcing is decided like that, basically, not only for transport, so that it's true for everything. And then, of course, the short-term debt servicing. So as much as possible, liquidate them, because ultimately it's a drain. And then the debt restructuring sometimes also helps. Then we have the cost of goods or the cost of manufacturing. Again, my screen is flooded with some messages. So we have these direct material costs, we have packaging costs, we have cost of consumables. All of these are now leading to the drain on your cost of production, and ultimately it will lead to profitability or gross profit. Gross profit converts to profitability, net profit. Net profit brings you surplus, and the surplus goes to working capital, and that becomes cash flow. So it's a cycle. So anything saved here, anything saved on this, what we see on the screen right now, converts ultimately into profit and into more control on your working capital and cash. So these are the various elements: direct material cost, packaging cost, consumable costs, manpower cost, energy cost, other utility cost, then maintenance costs, all types, quality assurance cost, and other sundry costs. So again, the same thing here, the same categories on the screen. And again, so what are the improvement opportunities for each one of them? Okay. So direct material cost, in any case, we've already discussed from a working capital perspective, but many other things. So packaging, for example, it can always be controlled. You can always go for alternative packaging materials, packaging approaches. Sometimes you can pack things together instead of, so I've seen companies going overboard on the packaging. Of course, packaging sometimes make a lot of sense for if it is a B2C product. Of course, then you have to spend money for that. But many times, even from a safety perspective or transportation perspective, so over packaging is always a drain, and it happens. Sometimes it's the other way around. Less packaging leads to damages during transit. So both sides. And then recycled packaging material. This is a big, nice area developing. So a lot of materials are now available actually in the market, which are recycled, and you can participate also now in the circular economy, and you can get your green credits for that. For example, government has come out with a scheme, so all these costs can be saved through that, by using these recycled packaging materials. Manpower costs, of course, enhance productivity. So there are multiple tools available. So one, of course, is the most oldest is the time motion study. So how much is time spent, for a person to man a station or move from one point to another? So there's a lot of idling, a lot of excess walking, and time spent. Multi-skilling is a very, very good option, especially when we have people who are idle for want of work of their own competence, of their own skills. So multi-skilling is always very good to have, and it also helps us. It also helps us when we have lost people, because of attrition. So then this helps very much. So then training of people also helps a lot in productivity. And then manpower optimization through low-cost automation. This is something which is very good. High-cost automation is capital intensive, but low-cost automation is actually very, very cheap, and so many different, PLC-based, relay-based, Poka-yoke kind of automation can be done in the company. And it is actually done by using innovative capability of the people themselves. They themselves come up with solutions. So they're actually very low cost. Varun should be able to actually guide you to some very good events that take place on low-cost automation. And it's really wonderful. And you can actually do both the things. So manpower cost goes down, productivity goes up, quality improves drastically because of this. So these are choices available on manpower cost. Then energy cost. I would strongly recommend, even if you're an SME, get some energy auditor and go through a complete cycle of energy audit. They will identify multiple opportunities for you in terms of machine, in terms of fuel, in terms of transport, and lighting, utility cost, environmental control cost. So many opportunities exist in every company for savings on the energy. Energy bill is always very high for SMEs as a major drain. So anything saved here is going to convert into profitability. And then also implement the TPM. I'm going to talk a little bit about TPM later on.
Also,
And
can
then,
we fast track a bit, because
okay. Can I take just 5 more minutes and stop?
Yeah,
finish
yeah,
it?
please.
Okay,
Please.
thank you very much. So I'll finish this one and then just run through most slides. That's it. These are the most important ones, Mr. Kumar. Right. Okay. Then other utility costs, of course, work towards water neutrality. And adopting SaaS solutions, particularly in IT, is a very good means available now to almost everybody. Very low cost solutions are available. You don't need to do many administrative actions. HR can be outsourced, and IT maintenance can be, IT management can be outsourced, accounts can be, payroll can be outsourced. So multiple things can be outsourced through SaaS solutions. They're very cheap, so you really save on administrative costs. Then the maintenance cost, of course, adopting TPM, installing sensors, and AI predictive solutions are now available for machine performance. And when does a machine actually need a preventive maintenance? So those are already available and they can be utilized. Then maintenance pays, reduce replacement rate by adopting TPM. And on the quality side, so adopting all these SQC tools, particularly process capability. So every major process, you must conduct process capability studies and see how well the process is performing in terms of giving error-free production. So anything that goes out of specification is a rejection, and rejection is again either or a rework, and that is a big cost. So this one measure gives a lot of information to everybody, and then you can build control charts around. Once you have the process capability done, then you can actually build control chart to see that your production is running within the specifications, every process stage. So then you can do that. 5S, I think everybody knows that, and daily works management. Two very important and very easy to implement tools, and they actually help a lot actually in systematizing procedures and reducing a lot of waste and a lot of rejections and rework at the shop floor level. Then we can also reduce rejection and rework through skills and through low-cost automation that I mentioned to you. And then adopt a lot of waste reduction methods are available. So for example, 3M, war on waste, lean tools, all of them are actually very helpful. So idle lines, idle machines, for example, people who are not being utilized, materials lying waste everywhere, scrap is available all over and start getting liquidated. So there are multiple types of waste. So you must have heard about the term called 3M, Mudamura and Muri. So look at that, and trainings are available. Please do that. Then reduce in-company inspection cost through AI tools. Wonderful tools are now available, especially if you're doing visual inspections. It's no longer required to do through your own eyes or putting an inspector. Even people have tried with mobile cameras, you can actually train an AI tool. It'll do better quality visual inspection than any person can do. And the accuracy keeps going up. Starts with about 90%, goes up to 95, 99%. And it's really very good. Then conduct analysis of expense trends by setting up small improvement projects. All these quality circles, Kaizen, all these things really help a lot. So these are all methods which actually help your process efficiency. And process efficiency, as I mentioned to you, then converts into profitability. So this is now, I won't take more time. I think we'll probably do some other sessions sometime. So this is the TPM, the total productivity maintenance. It's a very comprehensive platform, and many CII does it, many other consultants do it. So there are consultants available who can do it, only the first two pillars for you. So all these are available. It includes all the functions of production, development, and leads to zero accident, zero defect, and zero breakdown. That is the purpose of TPM. It can be done in two ways. One is the entire company, which is done later on. First, it is done at the shop floor level for the plants and the production processes. These are the different pillars of the TPM. So I would strongly recommend that you must go for the pillar 1, pillar 2, and then of course the pillar 3. This is for the maintenance side. And the fourth pillar, of course, where it starts linking with the quality. So your operational equipment efficiency of the machine, with the first four pillars, it starts going up tremendously. The breakdown comes down and the machine productivity goes up, quality goes up. All of that starts happening by using these first four pillars. Right. On the operational side, so I already mentioned to you, so daily works management is a wonderful tool, absolutely no cost tool. It's just a system in the company. People are involved and they actually come together for doing daily meetings and standardize the processes. The SOPs are standardized for everything at the shop floor. The worker themselves do it. You make teams with them and they only do the daily control, and they only define and standardize. So it just brings a whole lot of discipline at the shop floor level, and it minimizes a huge amount of waste everywhere. So that's what it does. These systems I already mentioned to you. So on the supply chain side, so just in time, of course, is the original Japanese concept. And then this was developed through the Kanban system, which I mentioned to you, which is a pull system all across the supply chain. We do ABC analysis for, I mentioned about the finished goods stores. So whatever item is high cost and moving fast, moving low, that should be reduced. And items which are low cost but moving fast, that is built on the highest. So ABC analysis is very good. And then we also have the EOQ and the reorder point techniques for controlling your inventory. So when should you really order? What is the economic value of the book goods that we are purchasing? So we optimize after doing the value analysis for the product. And reorder point, of course, is at what point of a stock going down, you must order the inventory. And similarly, this was the lean cluster that I was talking to you about, and lean management tools. So lean is very good. So cluster-based manufacturing, one operator or two operators can manage like 6 or 7 different operations by just realigning the way you place your machines. So huge amount of saving on productivity because of this, and takt time also goes down. Value stream mapping, I've already mentioned to you. 3M is the Muramuri, different types of waste and time motion study. So this helps a lot on the waste management. And SQC tools, of course, I mentioned to you
I
all
think,
of them.
Khalsa, we are going
The last one here. This is the last slide. Yeah.
slightly different from working capital efficiency management.
Okay.
So,
Right. Yeah. So I was only mentioning here,
these
Kumar
are
sir.
all productivity improvement tools. I can
Yeah,
understand.
but they convert, yeah, as I mentioned to you. So they will then convert anything saved here will get converted into the working capital. Okay, fine. Okay, so I'm finished with this one. This also is a very important ratio, which we must look at, inventory turnover ratio, convert directly into working capital. Thank you.
No, in fact, we needed one more session on this. Frankly, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because you see, working capital management is one thing, but productivity improvement is again a very important subject for any manufacturing enterprise. And I'm sorry I had to, in fact,
No, that's all right. Yeah, I knew that. Yeah,
looking at the time that we have, but surely we would like to have another session, because this kind of expert advice is not available generally. I mean, we have seen. So thank you very much. And I noted one important point, that is expenditure management that you mentioned in your working capital presentation. Expenditure management is also very important, and particularly in terms of utilities, payments of utilities, prepaid expenses, salaries and wages, because you deploy a lot of financial resources on these expenditures, apart from inventory and receivables. So there also one has to look at very carefully and see that unnecessary deployment of resources is not taken place. Like, for example, prepaid expenses, people don't even bother.
Absolutely, yes, exactly.
And that that involves a lot of expenditure, in fact, which gets blocked in the working capital.
Correct.
So we'll get back to you with the questions, and we'll keep discussing. So you please continue to remain with us. So let me now invite Mr. T.R. Vardhan. Vardhan Sahab, welcome. In fact, having you indeed a great pleasure. We met last time also, and we had very good deliberations.
Absolutely, sir.
And you are in fact, Vice President of SME Chamber of India. So you can very well understand the working capital pain of the people, because normally you have higher requirements in any industry, any business enterprise. I have seen the requirements are always more. And the bank credit or the available resources are always short.
Correct.
So what is the reason for that? And how do you see that your requirements are fully met at all the times? What measures would you like to advise to the manufacturers? Over to you, Mr. Vardhan. Let me briefly introduce Mr. Vardhan, who is the chairman of Mascot Systems Private Limited, and also vice president, a practical business person who is into manufacturing, so knows very well as to what kind of working capital issues that we are talking about. So over to you, Mr. Vardhan.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. And thank you for all my guests for coming over to hearing a small little advice that we can give the various participants around. While Dr. Kumar touched upon the basics as to what working capital is, he touched upon the various things and how the assets have to be better than the liabilities that we have in our balance sheets. He also touched upon the fact that it's essential we are able to keep right from the time we get the raw material till having the finished goods in place. But it's also imperative how quickly we are able to take this material away from our work, from our warehouse or from our shop floor or from our stores to the customer's needs, after which we will have the money for which we have invested back with us. Couple of things that are going to be very important that I'll touch upon. Cash flow is a very important criteria in terms that unless and until you have money in hand, you will not be able to do the requisite business. How do we manage the cash flow is very, very important. Say, for example, we have a turnover of, say, 100, and we first need to ensure how much of raw material we need. Like back in the 70s, the RBI specified that 3 months inventory is what we need to keep. Yes, these are basic norms as to why that we have to keep 3 months inventory. There are multiple ways how you can keep this inventory to ensure you have a better cash flow. We source our materials from specific vendors. Maybe it's got to be 2, 3, 4, 5. Having known the quality of the material that we are getting from our vendors are going to be consistent, we rather work a relation with our vendors wherein we can still reduce our inventory at our end and have our vendors stock the material at his end for you. How can this be achieved? These can be achieved by 2 methods. One is what we naturally like to believe is trust our vendor as much as we trust our customers. When we say we have to trust our vendors, we ensure we are able to give them the maximum business which we can offer with the quality and other things in place. Sign out a rate contract to spread over a year, by which your inventory is kept at the lowest end possible. The second important point that I got that's got to be taken into account. He's going to do this for you, provided you pay him on time every single time. Is it possible that the voice is lowered? Someone is speaking loudly in between. Varun, could you put other people on mute, please?
Just a moment, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Varun, because there's a lot of noise coming out from there. Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now it's important that we lower our inventories. How do we manage to lower our inventories? You may not need to keep an inventory of 3 months. You could reduce that by about 15 days less or 30 days less. Let's reduce 2 months by ensuring your vendors are taken care properly in terms of timely payments and giving them sufficient business as committed. Now, by this, you're able to work out a lower inventory by which your cash flow improves further. If you're having a regular vendor in place and you pay your vendor on time, the kind of credit that you can actually extract from him is a fact that from whatever committed days, you can extend it further, maybe from 30 to 45, or maybe 45 to 60, whichever way it is, having used them continuously and as a constant source as to how you're going to give them orders. The second point that's important is it's imperative you need to understand what your order projection is going to be spread over the next 3 months, based on which you can carry on with your manufacture. So your being in touch with the industry, with the market is imperative and important so that you know what kind of business you could possibly get with a strike rate that you can have upwards of 75 to 80%. If you are not in touch with the market and the happenings around, you may not be able to forecast what your business is likely to be. When you don't understand that portion of it, what happens is you end up having more inventory in your end. The second important point, if this is taken care, it actually helps you better in terms of how you need to plan your inventory. The third important point, as I would put it across, to Today, the government has been very good in bringing in certain policies wherein these large corporates are required to pay the SMEs within 45 days. The SME chamber where I am working with, we took up a lot of initiatives, and I do believe Power to SME also has taken a lot of initiatives with the government to ensure they are able to bring down the number of days within which the government or any entity needs to pay us, which is 45 days. Be rest assured, it is not 45 days. The clause very clearly says within 45 days. So it's imperative for you to understand how you're able to ensure your customers are able to pay you not in 45 days, but earlier than 45 days. How could you work that out? By ensuring you get your payments within 45 days or even earlier. The larger corporates and the PSUs normally tend to tell you that we have a scope of having 45 days to pay you off. But if you negotiate, believe me, it works. The PSUs, the large corporates, they will pay you. It depends on you how much you're able to negotiate and push them to ensure you get your money not in 45 days, but earlier than that. However, with your vendors, if you're going to be having a constant raw material sourcing from him, you can actually work towards getting a better credit term with them. And it works this by ensuring the debtor days are lower than your creditor days. You're able to ensure a slightly better cash flow. The second important point, most of us tend to believe we talk of gross profits and gross margins. While we are okay in talking about gross margins, gross profits, I would want you people to understand a better methodology of, instead of talking of gross margins, talk of contribution levels. What I mean by contribution levels is keeping a selling price of 100. At what price are you buying the material? The difference between 100 minus, say, 65 or 100 minus 55 or 100 minus 70, that's the contribution level, a 30 or a 40 or a 45. However, when you do your pricing to your customers, you talk of a gross margin. Imagine you put in a 30 level, it's only 30 contribution, but if you have a 30 gross margin, but if you ensure you keep your contribution as 30, your gross margins automatically go towards 45% or possibly 50%. What's the advantage of having this? The better the contribution levels, the discounts that you may end up giving your customers is lesser. In the process, the gross margins of yours on the long run improves drastically. And believe me, it works very, very effectively. And I've had this incorporated in many industry with many SMEs, and yes, they are enjoying this. Now, what is the advantage? Is the margins are going to be slightly higher than you expect, resulting in helping you in your cash flows. The third important point which is there, you have certain statutory requirements that need to be paid month on month, like your interest rates, interest that's got to be paid to the banks. Just ensure you pay them on time. The minute you pay your interest on time, your taxes on time, without defaulting in any of these, you could save a large amount of money in terms of default. Because of the default, there are various fines that occur. That is, you need to keep a discipline in place. Having kept a discipline in place, believe me, again, your cash flow will improve. Mr. Anupam Kaul mentioned about other savings that you could have. One of the things what you could actually work is ensuring people walk into office at 9 and leave at 5. It's a tendency of every single organization that the maximum work is done after 5 in the evening when the office shuts. Now, by your ensuring people are compliant to the fact they complete the work before 5, what you're going to be saving within your office is your energy costs. These energy costs may sound minuscule, but when you work on an overall basis, you will realize these costs are much higher. You're losing a lot of money here. A discipline in this actually helps. And believe me, I have had this implemented in many a place. There are 2 advantages that you get in the process. One, the efficiency of the individual goes up by approximately 15 to 20%. That's one, because he can leave for home at 5 and he can be with his family. It's more psychological, but the effect is very, very enormous in terms of savings for the organization. People are able to leave early from office, spend time, and again, they are fresh the next morning. And trust me when I make the statement, I'm repeating it, the efficiencies go up by 20%. And indirectly, all these reflect on better cash flows. I have all the other points Dr. Kumar and Mr. Kaul have touched upon. I wouldn't want it repeated. With this, I think I'll snap and finish my presentation. Yes, Dr. Kumar.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Varadan. Thank you. It was indeed a very educative discourse based on your practical experience. In fact, I just wanted to mention that I can sum up what you said, that working capital requirement, working capital, efficiency in management requires, first of all, understanding how do you work out the working capital? How do you arrive at the working capital requirement?
Great.
Mr. Kaul also hinted, in fact, there are several elements which comprise, in the working capital requirement. Working capital assessment is an important issue. And as I have seen, Reserve Bank of India has issued detailed guidelines for working capital assessment. And still, a lot of enterprises, manufacturing enterprises particularly, are unable to, work out exactly as to what is their need and how do they manage. So these are the issues which are, which require in-depth analysis and understanding. So thank you very much for your, finer elements that you explained.
I honestly, Dr. Kumar, all that I needed to touch upon, I had Dr. Kumar and Anupam Kaul touch upon everything. There's no point repeating the same thing which both of you touched upon. I saw the other nuances which are there. If I can bring into play, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think we have had a very good discussion. So I would only say that there are several recommendations made by Reserve Bank of India, and I would suggest that the participants go through some of the requirements that the RBI has advised the banks to follow to assess the working capital, as to how do you assess the working capital, and that comprises of the a kind of framework under which every unit and every enterprise is supposed to work. And as I said, the diversion of working capital, diversion of liquid resources towards capital assets, acquiring capital assets, which happens ignorantly sometimes. As I said, that you keep transferring funds for various expenditures, whether capital expenditures or domestic expenditures or some outside payments which are not part of working capital, your business working capital, sometimes create problems and they need to be really checked. So I think we look at some questions in case there are any queries raised by participants. Varun, in case you have any queries.
There's no such question that has come in this. So we have one query that if Mr. Kaul can share the presentation with the participants that came in from Mr. K. Ganana Sekar. Any participants who would like to ask any question to the panelists, please.
I suggest that Varun, we have another session
Okay.
on the productivity management,
Sir.
which includes all these tools, lean and all these technologies which are required for improving efficiency in your production management. So
Right.
that session also would be very important. Of course,
Individual.
sharing of the presentation, of course, would be a great.
Yeah, that's not a problem, of course. Absolutely, yes. You have already shared it with Varun, you can do that.
There was one
certainly. And I agree with
query
Mr. Mr. Kumar, sorry,
Yes, yes.
that actually, when I was asked to speak, I was asking Varun actually, because I'm not a person with this financial background. But then this becomes so relatable, you know, what we do in the quality side and productivity side, eventually it becomes so enmeshed with this cash flow and working capital thing that we have seen so enormously in the companies, and they struggle because of this.
Absolutely.
So that's why I thought
I
I'll
fully
touch upon
agree.
this. But I'll be most happy to do it separately as a separate
Yes,
session.
yes.
Anytime,
Yes.
with pleasure, certainly.
But you
Thank you.
certainly touched on the working capital finer issues also.
Yeah, of
The
course.
cost management.
Yes, of course.
Cost management becomes another very important
Yes,
issue
that's right.
in every
Exactly.
aspect of the expenditure as well as asset. Ultimately, working capital comprises of what? Your various deployment in the different kinds of assets.
Yes.
They are floating assets, not the fixed assets.
Floating assets,
So-
not fixed assets, of course.
So naturally, you have to save on those floating investments and then save on the cost. Ultimately, it leads to reduction in the cost.
Yes,
I can only suggest one thing. The bottom line one person needs to understand when you're talking of your balance, the assets should weigh heavier than the liabilities.
Absolutely.
Of course, yes.
In nutshell, if you can't keep your liabilities low, and how do your liabilities come down in the event that you're able to have the word 5-letter word TRUST, trust, with both your vendors and your customers? Your assets will always start going down, and that's where the problem starts.
Yes. And that is how, what you said, all these ratios are derived.
Very true.
Talk of current ratio, what is that? Basically, assets to liabilities. And if your assets are equal to liabilities, your current ratio is not considered to be a good one. It has to be heavier. Current assets have to be heavier than the current liabilities. Then only your current ratio and liquidity position becomes stronger.
How does your current current ratio go upwards beyond 1? You have to ensure your creditors have longer times that you have to pay, and your debtors pay you on time.
You said it.
That's
So
right.
if you don't collect your money, believe me, unless and until you pay your creditors on time, you actually cannot walk up to your debtor and tell me, you bloody well pay my money. Because there is that guilt that you're defaulting on your creditors, and you can't be asking for money from the debtors. Your mind doesn't suggest, and you will not be 100% good at asking him also, because that's fear that you're also defaulting somewhere. That's why I insist on few things. Pay your statutory requirements on time, pay your bankers interest on time, pay your creditors on time. And I can assure you that ratio will not be 1, it'll be closer to 1.3, 1.35, which will be fantastic.
Yes.
And here I can relate what Mr. Kaul was saying, the, tools like JIT and Lean, so that you are able to deploy these tools to keep your inventory at the minimum. And that is how you can save your investment in working capital on these current assets.
That's right.
Like I mentioned very
becomes
clearly,
relevant, you see.
Yeah, like what Mr. Kaul had said, JIT and Kanban and everything. But more than Kanban and JIT, if you have that relationship working with your supplier, believe me, you don't even have to keep a month's inventory with you.
Yeah,
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah, trust is so important. Absolutely, yes.
That's the word. Trust is the word.
Absolutely.
So there was a query I just read on the screen. Somebody was asking, I have a service enterprise. So how do I manage my working capital? So it's an interesting question, because we were talking about managing working capital efficiently in a manufacturing enterprise. So that gentleman asking, he has a service enterprise. So would you like to take it, Mr. Varadhan?
Yeah, sure. Can I ask the individual an extra question? What kind of service is he into? Again, when you're talking of services, it looks into two things. One, we're talking of trading, and the other one we talk in terms of services given to the customer.
Services given to the customers, not the trading. Yeah.
Okay. Now, how do we manage the working capital? You have to ensure two things in this place. One, you have to negotiate the correct terms with your customer when you're providing a service. Say, for example, you're providing a service to a refinery for overhauling in a shutdown job. You have to have your payment cycle in place in stages on deployment of manpower, what kind of money you would get in terms of this much you complete the electrical, this much of money you get, mechanical, this kind of money you get. You have to have that clarity rather than saying, I'll take it in the end. Better still, you can still work out in terms of timely payment. The entire system is going to be taking 45 days to complete. Now you have your timely payment or weekly payments that are going to come to you. So you specify that very clearly so that the customer cannot play around with the fact that I shall pay you towards the end of the contract is over or whatever. Have I answered your question, sir?
Yes, yes, yes. You want to add, Mr. Call, anything?
Yeah, so I think in services, because we don't have too many goods, so I think the major cost goes in salaries and wages. So I think that's the manpower cost. And also sometimes, I mean, if you look at pure services that we have, these is IT and financial and all of the fintechs and kind of services. So it's all hardware costs and software costs. So also manpower costs. So those are the costs that you need to control, I think. So, I mean, it's not as much as inventory, as you need to look at optimization. So that's where you'll be able to reduce your working capital strain. So
Yes.
people optimization and software optimization. So I think that's what we need to do. And I think I completely agree with Mr. Raghavchari. So in services, the payout has to be very calibrated right in the contract. I mean, I am a service provider myself. I make it absolutely crystal clear. These are the milestones. These are the stages. This is when you pay me. Absolutely. So, and if you don't pay me, I stop right there. And it's like this, very, very calibrated. That's so important, in services.
This is where I come into the previous statement that I made. Ensure, because your creditors, you pay them on time. Who are your creditors here? The manpower, the software they're securing, all that is the creditors. And who are your debtors? When you get your stage-wise payment on time. So that's got to be important.
Right. So Varun, any other thing that you would like to have?
No, sir. Thank you. I just want to request the participants, if they have any questions, they can connect later on with the speakers through us. Yeah, that's all. That's all.
So thank you very much. I think we have had a wonderful discussion. I'm sure that participants would have benefited by this. There are too many dimensions, in fact, of working capital management. We can keep talking for hours. There are tens of circulars and guidelines, and there are at least 4 committee reports which I have read, issued by Reserve Bank of India on working capital management. So it is not that we can complete the whole discussion in 1 hour, but at least we have been able to cover major issues concerning the working capital efficiency and working capital management. So thank you, Mr. Kaul. Thank you, Mr. Varadarajan Saab, or Varadhan, Mr. Varadhan.
Yes.
And thank you, our team.
Dr. Kumar, while on the subject, I'd just like to share with you, I don't know if you are already aware, in the present Business Today edition, I have been featured in the present Business Today edition of October 17th. Varun?
Oh, wonderful.
I highlighted while introducing you, sir.
Wonderful. No, we should have shown that page, in fact.
Yeah, congratulations,
Next
Mr.
time.
Raghavchari.
I mean, I can't put it across, but then I was just in the Business Today, I had featured in that in the 17th of October edition, Business Today CEOs of the Year.
Actually, in our dispensation of this program's information, we should have put that also. Maybe
Varun, if you have it, you can put it across. I'll only be happy to see it.
Maybe next time.
I have it on my system right now, but I have it in my phone.
Yeah, you could put it across for the participants, and Dr. Kumar and Anupam Kaul to see. They will be happy too. And from what I hear is Dr. Kumar and Anupam Kaul are pretty enthusiastic about seeing that photograph.
Yes, surely. If you have, are you showing, Varun?
Just a moment. Yeah.
We can have a glance, in fact.
If I have your number, I'll send a soft copy across to you.
Yeah, please do send my number.
Yeah, I need your number. I don't have your number.
My number, in fact,
I'll take it from Varun.
Yeah,
Varun can share. Yeah, I think we can share our numbers.
Sure. I'll do that.
Yes. And Varun, some people wanted emails, so you can share that. No worries.
You can share them. Some people wanted our numbers. Yes.
Yes.
Let the profile send it to you.
Okay. So over to you, Varun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar sir, for moderating this wonderful session. Thank you, Mr. Kaul, for really informative PPT that could trigger another program, many more programs that we could have organized. And thank you, Mr. Vardhan. Thank you for joining us today, and congratulations once again for featuring in
so
business
much.
today. Thank you, sir.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
So Kumar, and thank you, Mr. Raghav.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar.
Mr.
Thank you,
Vardhan.
Anupam. Look you up when I'm in Delhi. I guess you guys are in Delhi.
Yeah, I'm in Noida. Yeah, I live in the other end.
I'll look you up when I come to Delhi next.
Please do that. Yes, it'll be wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully we will continue to have another, few more sessions also together.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Look forward to
Thank
having
you.
you again. Thank you.
Bye.
Sure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. There are 4 people